Hi, so I'm Carly and I am mum to James, Michael and Matthew. I've got 3 boys and they are now 10. James just turned 10 this week, so we're 10 years into parenting. I have struggled with anxiety as a mother, and I didn't realise I was struggling until fairly recently. So we had 3 boys in 4 years and it was awesome and incredible, and it wasn't until we got past the perinatal period, and I was having to thinking I was in the perinatal period for 6 years. It's a long time, and it wasn't until after that I realised how much I had been struggling. So I first began to notice that things probably weren't quite right when my eldest was, when he was turning up preschool, and I was just had my 3rd baby. And in that year I had a child turning 4, I had a 2-year-old, and I had a newborn baby who was very unwell and was hospitalised quite a lot. So we were in and out of hospital a lot, and my husband also became very unwell. And at that period I actually became my husband's carer, and 6 years later I'm still his carer. So our life changed absolutely, pivoted, and dynamic changed. Everything changed in those few months, and that's when I realised I was really struggling. But because things were changing so quickly, I was doing a lot of firefighting and reacting, and it really wasn't until my youngest was probably 4 that I realised how much I had personally been struggling. Up until then I was doing a lot of reacting to all the crises that were happening, and so yeah, it was probably 6-7 years into my parenting journey before I realised that actually I'm not actually okay right now. So there are some additional pressures of being a carer with children who have additional needs, and also my husband's additional needs, and the impact that's had on my own mental health. And I think because I was reacting and coping with looking after them, I didn't actually consider the impact of my own mental health until probably too late, and things were very difficult. So that was kind of the biggest difficult thing for me, is that I didn't allow or consider that actually I was not okay. I felt like I should be okay because I wasn't the one who was unwell. I wasn't the one who had autism. I wasn't the one who was in and out of hospital with breathing difficulties. I wasn't the one on lots of medication for various health issues. So because of those things, I didn't think that just because I was feeling highly anxious and distressed a lot of the time, I did not think that was as important. Because it wasn't realistically, but I was dealing with other people's health, and really health things were coming first. And it wasn't until things began to crumble that I realised I was not coping with everyday things. That I was, because 3 of my children have different additional needs. Certainly my oldest son has autism, my youngest son has medical issues that really, he was hospitalised multiple times a year. So that was the most important thing, and it was. But I realised that until I started looking after my own mental health and I started to prioritise that, my family weren't going to be okay, because I wouldn't be able to keep caring for them if I wasn't going to care for myself. So my husband and my son have had and do have additional supports in place to support them in their medical needs, and also in their own mental health actually as well. Both of them have had supports in both areas. However, there was no support offered to me as the carer and as a mother, and that was what I really found quite difficult, because there was an expectation of me just getting on with it. And so while I was caring for my husband and my son, I also had a smaller child and then an infant then who became medically unwell as well. So there was a lot of just this expectation of just getting on with it, and that was expectations from the support services. The few times I reached out for support, unfortunately it wasn't very positive response we got. We had social services interventions, and a lot of it was around risk assessment and making sure everyone was well and safe, which was absolutely the priority. But it was done in such a way that it felt aggressive and felt very much like it was an attack, and that you're failing and not doing a very good job. And words were used to me like, if you can't keep your children safe, or if you can't do this, then we'll find someone who can. So when you're trying to care for an adult, a partner, and you have 3 children who are at that stage, I think in that one it was with 3 who were under 4, possibly 3 under 5, and you're doing all the things you can, it was very, very difficult because there was nowhere else to go. We had some support in terms of family support and some friends, but it's not the same, because family and friends, they have their own priorities, they have their own children, they have their own work commitments and different things that they need to do. and no one else gets it because it was so complex. And I think that's where I really struggled. Our situation became very complex. It was not a case of the support services for my son were there for him and for me as a parent to support my son. The support services for my husband were to support him and his medical issues and things like that. There were actually no support service for us as a family, and that was what was missing, I think, from all of this. There was no looking at the bigger picture, because as a parent and a mother and the primary carer, I had to consider all those things, and I think that's where everything kind of fell apart, that there was no service has this overarching view of the family unit. So in terms of the support services that were available, they were limited and they were very, very time bound, and that was another issue we had, and that sometimes to support one of my children or my husband, we had to do things in a certain time frame, and actually that maybe impacted someone else in the family who also had other additional needs, and there were literal times when we had to choose. We have to prioritise this person over this person, and those were very difficult choices as a mother to make, and that's where that's when things really started to fall apart for me, when I really felt like I am choosing here between services. I'm choosing between my family's well-being and literally picking and prioritising, and that's when I really felt an incredible amount of guilt and failure, and I felt I'm not doing this very well. And then the normal stuff like life and housework and finances and all those things come tumbling down, because the balls just come tumbling down at that point, and that's when things really become very unmanageable. Mm-hmm. So I tried to reach out for support in different ways, but to be honest, there was nowhere really to go, and that's where I really struggled. And I'm quite happy to talk about the struggles and issues that we had, and I spoke with our GP, I spoke with the different support services that were involved, my husband and my children, and a lot of them were still very, very laser focused on the specific service that they offered. And again, it's that issue of there's no overarching support. So as a carer, I think I was given a leaflet about being a carer, but I was a carer for my children as well as a mother. I'm a carer for my husband as well as a wife. I'm a person in my own right, and it just felt like there was no place, and there was no one had any, no one even considered the roles that I was playing and that the impact that was going to have, and any support that was there was, like I said, the time bound issue was a real issue. It was a real thing, and it was a lot of gatekeeping. You had to be on a certain path of support services to get into the other support services, and no one told you. There was no like written down like list of do this, then do this, then do this. It was a lot of wasted time of phone calls and letters and repeating your story over and over and over again, and that in particular was where I really that had a big impact on me, because one, I'm sharing it's not just my story, it's not just my issues, it's my husband's mental health issues along with my child's education stuff. So how much can I share with the children's school compared to my husband's appointments, compared to like if I'm having an appointment with my own GP, and it becomes very complex. That is the word, complex. But when services are looking at things individually, but actually as a mother I'm looking at the 5 people in my household, that was very, very complicated. So I tried to find some support for myself, and I went first to my own GP, and although my GP was very, very pleasant, it was very limited. It was a very short appointment, and the first response was to give me medication, which I really reluctant to take, because I really felt like my anxiety was very, very situational, very, very circumstantial to my family's needs, and I really felt very strong. I'm not depressed. I genuinely was not depressed. I feel like I had a lot of anxiety that was very related to the specific struggles that we had, and then I felt very resentful that the support that was being offered to me was because I was not coping. But I was not coping because the services were not in place to support me in my role as a mother and carer and wife, and it felt very unfair that their only response was to give me medication that I did not think was appropriate at the time. I went to 2 or 3 appointments. I followed up, and again the only support was, have you taken your medication? You taken your, I think it's a Talipram or something with some medication. I was like, it's not that. I don't feel like I need that. I need help. I need physical help. I need emotional help. I need support that is not my family. I don't want to be on the phone to my family all the time. I want a service that can look at our family and holistically support us, not just throw medication at me, and that was it. Some support I did actually access was by the time my 3rd son was arrived, and social media was becoming much more prevalent, and support groups. So actually I started joining a few Facebook support groups for breastfeeding, for cloth wearing, cloth bums, and different things like that were of interest in parenting, and those I actually found really invaluable, and I learned a lot through other parents, and that having that peer support network was really invaluable, because in the middle of the night, whenever I was struggling and I was distressed and maybe I had somebody throwing up and a baby who wasn't sleeping, all the things that happen, to be able to go onto a Facebook group and somebody else be awake and experience something at the same time, I remember the first time it happened and I was like, I'm not alone. It was a real aha moment. And I'll say that was like, I literally remember what I was wearing. I remember the exact moment it happened. It was such a big deal. So from that, I began to actively seek support groups online and actively seek ones that were of interest to me. And that was another thing as well, finding something who's the similar sort of parenting ethos and things like that. That was really, really important, because a lot of my friends didn't support that. A lot of my family didn't have same parenting ideals and things. So that was that's where I found a lot of my support initially. So things look very different for me and my family now. In the last few years, I have educated myself an awful lot, and I have begun to prioritise my own mental health, and that has changed everything for me and my family at home. I learned very quickly that by doing things for me, my family will be better. It's a very simple formula. Look after the mummy, the babies and the husband will be okay too. And doing that, I've actively, and I also found that I was not doing things to look after myself. And that was me putting that on. My family didn't put restrictions on me. My husband didn't put restrictions on me. I felt I couldn't have this awful lot of guilt. So that's all changed now. So I actively do things for my own well-being. I look after myself. I look after my health. I look after my diet. I look after, I dye my hair. I do little things like that. And my family are so supportive. And I use language. Now, this is another really important one for me and my family. I use language to articulate what I'm doing. So I make it very clear how I'm feeling and when I'm overwhelmed, and I help my family understand that as well. Language is really powerful, and we use that a lot to communicate, and that's been really helpful as well. I also do a lot of work with We Are Pangs. I've worked with We Are Pangs the last year. I'm one of the peer support leaders, and that has changed my life exponentially. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, I think is probably the best way to describe that, where I felt like other people have it much worse and other people do it much worse. But I learned through Wear Pangs and the work I've done with them, especially in the peer support leader training, that actually my experiences are valid, and that just blew my mind. That actually my experiences are valid. That was a big one, and that's where I am now. It was really important that I educate myself and take control of my own recovery. First of all, because I wasn't able to find the support when I needed, and that's not to say it isn't there, but I couldn't find it, so that suggests to me it's not accessible. And it was certainly what was offered to me in terms of a GP appointment. That was literally all that was available. I couldn't find anything else that was easily accessible. It wasn't appropriate. So educating myself in finding tools in my own recovery has been really helpful. I've learned that there's a whole range of things and experiences in mental health and mental ill health, and I don't have to be one or the other, or all of them or none of them. I can be on my own journey, and that's been really powerful. I think that just because I haven't had maybe on certain medication, or I haven't had certain experiences with hospitalisation, things like that, does not invalidate my own experiences, and that has been really empowering. And I think supporting all people to realise, yes, this might be normal, but it's not really normal. I think it should be maybe change the conversation to this is maybe common, and that's different, and just not minimising it. That's been really empowering. So there's a few things I would like to say to people who are experiencing something that I've experienced. They maybe have children with additional needs or a partner with additional needs, and that is to recognise that you yourself are valid, and you are a person, and you absolutely have your own needs too. And although we may sometimes prioritise our family's needs above our own, it does not mean that we don't ever consider our needs, and we need to do that. So it's really important to consider our own health and our own mental health as well. That was a big one for me. I just kept pushing it down, further down the list until, and I began to feel so guilty that if anything, if I consider myself at all, it was just selfish and indulgent, and that is not the case. So for other people going through something similar, I would say reach out to anywhere and anyone that you might be able to find some support. So for me, initially it was online peer support groups. Now it's with We Are Pangs, and finding other people with similar experiences. Doesn't have to be the same experience, but just other people who get it, other people who get it. And that's usually other mums. For me, it's been other mums who have so I have now friendships with with mums who have children with similar additional needs, and it's been really, really helpful, because when we go out to the play park, we get when our children behave in a certain way and other people look at us funny, we get it, because that shared experience, I think, has been the biggest support I've been able to find. Shared experience has been the big one for me in the last time, and I would encourage anyone to find that. And the lovely thing about social media and other services and We Are Pangs is that that's available now. There's an opportunity to find other people who get it. For health professionals who are supporting families, I would urge them to remember that they are supporting families, and it is not just the individual. And that individual, that while your priority might be working with that individual's needs in that moment, that individual is in the family, the context of their own family, and they have other priorities. It might be financial, it might be another person's health, it might be work, it might be all those other things. And although that's not your job to fix those or do those things, what they bring to the table is so important, and it dominates their care. It dominates their own priorities, it dominates how they are going to prioritise their own health and well-being. They're not going to be able to engage in your services when when they have so much else to consider. So that's really important, because as much as a person might want to engage in a certain service, they may not be able to. Literally, they may not be able to. As I said before, that for my family, because everyone had so many complex needs, sometimes it was a case of choosing, this is not your day. and that has to be okay too. And maybe that flexibility around that understanding a parent who has children with additional needs, or supporting a partner, that they may need the support, but they may not be able to access it at that moment, and maybe to find alternative ways around that. That's what I think is most important, and to understand the family dynamic, to understand that the complexity of that, and it's not just isolated, because we don't come just on our own. I think it's really important to provide specialist care for parents, particularly mothers, and yes, fathers, absolutely, because becoming a parent the first time or even the third time round changes every single time. When I had my third baby, I was becoming a parent to 3 children for the first time. It's all new experiences, and people, I think, forget that. So that perinatal period particularly, it changes absolutely everything. It changes the person's body, it changes how they consider things, it changes their finance, it changes absolutely every single aspect of their life. And services need to be so aware of the impact that's going to have. And I think especially whenever there's children with additional needs, even if it's an older child with additional needs and then a new baby comes along, the impact on the parent, especially the mother's mental health and her well-being in general, it's just, no one knows. She can't even begin to comprehend how much things are going to change, and people need to be specifically looking for that and actively seeking ways to support that special dynamic and what's happening in those changes there. And I think that's often overlooked. I think especially if the families have children with additional needs, when more children come along, they're just looking at that, the mother and child, that dyad, that little duo, and they're forgetting the dynamic of the whole family and the impact that's going to have. I know in our circumstances we had issues around keeping the little infant safe around an older child who was expressed themselves in a way that was a bit tricky. That was an interesting one. No one supported us in that, other than to maybe consider social services, and we were very concerned about a different aspect. There was no support in that. I think I would just like to say that the element of shared experiences, I did not know how powerful that was going to be, and I did not know how much of an impact that was going to be on my mental health and my recovery. I did not know I was probably as unwell as I was until I started sharing experiences with other people who had similar life events going on, and that was massive for our family when I realised I was not alone, because that's what it felt like before. I felt alone. And having a peer support network was just life-changing. I think is probably the only way to describe that. In my circumstances, I did not need counselling. I did not need psychiatric care. I did not need a lot of stuff that kind of people, I think, associate with perinatal mental illness. So I felt like I didn't belong in that space. But the peer support element of it, I did need, and I've gained so much from it. It's changed my life. It's changed it's changed my relationships at home. It's changed my relationship with myself and how I consider my own wellness and recovery. It's just changed all that. So I'm so privileged to find a place, and I would encourage anyone who's struggling at all to seek that. And it may not, the support and help that you need, you may not know you need it, and you may find it in unusual places. So I thought I was well because I didn't need psychiatric care. I needed something else, and I found that, and I think that's what I would like to encourage everyone else to do.